What's going on, everybody? It's WebsterStyle and Brian Sapph here with the NRW Checkpoint, talking about everything game related, especially new releases for this week. But we're going to start off. It's been a lot of news and rumblings with Sony, Microsoft, Call of Duty, Activision. This week over in Europe, Microsoft signed that 10-year deal with Nintendo. One, to bring select Xbox games over to Nintendo platforms, but if they buy Activision, guaranteed to have Call of Duty on the Switch and whatever Nintendo system comes after that. And then they also signed a deal with Nvidia for their GeForce Now streaming platform. So that was one of the big things they talked about as far as the cloud gaming space and how Microsoft will have a monopoly, but they are not just bringing Activision and Blizzard games over when and if the deal is signed. They're bringing Xbox games over to it. So basically, if you don't know how GeForce Now works, it is not like PlayStation Now, PlayStation Plus or Game Pass, whereas it simply allows you to stream games you already own. So if you buy them from Microsoft Store, Epic Store, Steam, if you own those games and they're accessible on their servers, you can then play those games via the cloud, via GeForce Now. I think the base price is like $9.99 a month. So it is cloud gaming, but not a direct competitor to those console-based or even Game Pass PC. You don't have to own the games for that. So that was a big deal. So Brian and I, we were kind of touching on this before we started recording. Sony's in a position where they could really X themselves out of having Call of Duty as it is, and everybody else could possibly have it. Now, we know it ain't going to happen, but still, it's a dubious position to be in when pretty much everyone in the gaming industry, for the most part, outside of Sony, Google, and it's like one other entity, was not even a large entity, is like, nah, we're against this. But everybody else, including Tencent, is for this merger, for this acquisition. Brian, what do you think?
I think it's a lot of hoopla. I really, from a consumer standpoint, right? Because I mean, I guess there would be different motivations behind why Sony would push back on this kind of thing from a business standpoint. But from a consumer standpoint, like, and this is what I'm about to say. This is why we need to have more like gamers actually in positions at these companies, because you're making a big fuss about something that doesn't have I don't know what the right word is, but Call of Duty doesn't have a stake in gaming that will allow it to continue for X amount of years. You're talking about Xbox signing a 10-year agreement with Nintendo to bring certain Xbox games, and definitely Call of Duty should the acquisition go through. But it's like in 10 years, we probably won't care about Call of Duty. Like, it's been a while since the game has been out. The player base continues to complain about the improvements that Activision are making to the game. Like, I don't think the fuss over Call of Duty is warranted. Like, Sony is a powerhouse all on its own. I get it. Like, you don't want to put yourself in a predicament, like you were saying, Webster, to like lose out on such a huge market in the gaming space. But being that you are the competitor, that means you have a leg up, or not the competitor, but the leader in the space. I mean, you have a leg up to possibly create something new that could take away from all of that.
Right.
Like, I don't think Sony understands the way the gamer mindset works, and that's probably why they're shooting themselves in the foot complaining about Call of Duty, when Call of Duty is probably not going to be the game to play in the next couple of years. We look at what's going on now with Hogwarts Legacy is taking over the gaming space for right now. Elden Ring's had a similar fanfare around it. Thor Ragnarok, like there are games that are coming out that are proving that the customer base of gaming as a whole, they don't necessarily care wholeheartedly about Call of Duty. So I mean, I don't know. I just want it to be over. Like, if the acquisition's gonna go through, like, let's let it go through. If they're gonna say no, go back to the drawing board, rework that contract. Like let's move forward from this particular particular gripe that Sony has for it, because it's tiring. I'm like, you doing all this over Call of Duty. Meanwhile, they about to snake your entire like the entire foundation that built the PlayStation brand, meaning like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, like they about to take all of those games from you. You complaining about Call of Duty, a live service game that is proving to decrease in popularity over the years. Like I don't know, I don't get it, but
I don't get it. This is my only thing I understand about Sony in this situation. Sony right now has marketing rights. Sony right now has exclusives on maps for a year before they come to any other console, i.e. Xbox. So they make a lot of money off of that, and some players are driven to the PlayStation platform for that. But from all reports, that deal expires in like 3 years or 3 iterations, whatever it is. They know full well Microsoft is not renewing that deal when that deal is over.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, even if Microsoft didn't buy Activision, there's no guarantee that deal will be renewed anyway, because Microsoft come in and dump a wad of cash on Activision and get that deal. Because remember, back in the 360 era, Microsoft had that deal. And Sony just paid more money.
Right.
And had found it more worthwhile.
Exactly. And not only that, but the PlayStation at the time was doing fine.
Yeah.
In the player base. I don't get it. I don't understand what. Maybe Activision is doing something behind the scenes that is yet to be revealed, that only Sony and Nintendo and PlayStation or Microsoft know about, and it's going to revolutionize the gaming space. I don't know. Other than that, I can't think of any reason as to why they would literally be like crying about, oh, Call of Duty is going to be like, so what? Like, you got a plethora of games in your current selection base for the PlayStation 5, which has been elusive because of COVID. Like you're good. Like I don't understand. I don't understand why they crying about it so much. But
I agree. I'm like you. I want this deal to be done.
Yeah, like if it's going to go through
about it. I'm tired of Sony's complaining. I'm tired of the posturing. Let's just get it done and see how it shapes out, because everybody got deals in place. Everybody signed contracts. The only thing that's going to change is who's going to own Activision for the most part, as far as Call of Duty is concerned. We'll see how everything else goes.
Right.
Because, everybody's fighting about Activision, but fighting about Call of Duty, but Activision has a deep roster of IP.
Yeah.
That could become Xbox exclusive. Right. And that's what nobody's talking about.
The focus.
I'm talking about console IP, not the PC stuff. I don't see that going Xbox exclusive, but I mean, you said like Crash, like Spyro. I mean, you think of things like, and not saying Pitfall is a household name anymore, but I mean, Pitfall was the game that the first Activision game, because Activision was founded from ex-programmers from Atari who developed for the Atari 2600, and Pitfall was that first game. So you're talking about historic video game IP that's part of what is with Activision. I mean, it could be, if done right. And I will say this, Microsoft, as far as how they've been doing things, they've had some missteps, don't get me wrong, but they've been doing things really right over the past 3-4 years with their IP and trying to get things straight. I know people will have issues with Halo. I enjoyed the campaign, what I played so far. I'm not a multiplayer person, so I'm not going to comment on that, because I'm not a live service person. I'm not a multiplayer person anymore as far as shooters, but campaign story, it was Halo. It felt like Halo. It smelled like Halo. It played like Halo. I was good with that. I was really good with that. And everything else they put out, I've enjoyed. So we'll see. But speaking of Sony had some other news this week where they released their VR2 headset with a buttload of games, with some notable games including Firewall Ultra, the VR add-on for Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Call of Mountain, which, interestingly enough, was only got like 60s for scoring, which I found kind of interesting. Like 6.5. Yeah, for the Horizon. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, we've said before, just because a game doesn't score 8s and 9 doesn't mean it's a bad game. Okay.
Right, that's true.
And then also, this is not the least of the games that were released, but all we're going to highlight is the modification for Resident Evil 0 for VR, much like a lot of people love playing Resident Evil 7 in VR. So, you know, it'll be interesting as we go. They had a state of play today where they showcased a couple other VR games that are coming out and a couple other titles. We'll probably talk about more about that next week, get some more in depth, because I don't know about you. I haven't watched all the trailers yet, Brian. So
me either. Yeah. And before we get into everything,
yes,
also there was news that came out about Mortal Kombat 12 that I think the fans will be excited about. Apparently, one of the executives over there, or whoever, I don't know who this streamer gentleman was, but the executive who was working on the game, like one of the lead technicians for the game, whatever, he was on a conference call that was being live streamed, and you know, he revealed, you know, that number 12 is coming for the Mortal Kombat franchise. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is because, you know, Mortal Kombat is like one of the most popular fighting franchises. If we're getting what's that, Street Fighter 6 this year, and Mortal Kombat 12 is going to be a good time for people who enjoy fighting games.
Sounds good. Yeah, I was watching some of that Street Fighter 6 footage from the PlayStation event. I'm like, let me tell you, I have not been excited for a Street Fighter game in at least 10 plus years until now. Like, I'm like, I got a good new system to play this, like straight up. Like, this looks really cool.
I'm actually excited for it too.
Right. So let's take up some new games that aren't PlayStation VR. Now, we will be watching the trailer for Firewall Ultra. You know, if all the PlayStation VR 2 games released, we got at least watch one trailer. But let's get into some non-VR games. First up is a game that's a bit of a throwback. It's Akka Arrh. It's on the PS4, 5, Xbox One SX, Switch, Atari VCS, and PC. Yes, I said the Atari VCS. It's an action game from developer Llamasoft and publisher Atari. It brings a warmness to my heart. So
yeah, man, Atari is legendary.
Exactly. Akka Arrh is an arcade video game developed by Llamasoft and published by Atari, about a cascade of words, colors, shapes, and sounds flow around your turret as you desperately fight off swarms of inbound attackers. It's a modern take on a scrapped project from the 80s, providing players with a fast-paced, addictive arcade shooter experience and psychedelic visuals. Protect your life rings as you chain together combos and go for a high score. So we're definitely watching the trailer for that. I'm like, oh, old Atari game updated. Oh, we gotta watch that one. We got to watch that.
It sounds familiar and very nostalgic.
Exactly.
Definitely want to watch that trailer.
Next up is a game that's been getting a lot of hype in the past few months, and it's one that I've downloaded 2 days ago, and I still haven't gotten a chance to play it. It's Atomic Heart. It's on the PS4, 5, Xbox One SX, Game Pass, and PC, and that's of course why I downloaded it. It's on Game Pass. It's an action FPS from publisher Mundfish and developer Focused Entertainment. Atomic Heart is an adventure first-person shooter, events of which unfold in an alternative universe during the high moon of the Soviet Union. The combat in the game consists of shooting and slashing with improvised weapons. A wide variety of enemies is featured, which may be mechanical, biomechanical, biological, and some which are airborne. Now, for me, with this game, as a cat that I follow on Twitter, who's like the Russian game guy. So he has a Telegram, and I joined his Telegram, and it's all about gaming news and stuff. So he's been getting a lot of inside footage, art, stuff like that on the game, which has got me excited. Now, outside of the political climate that we live in today, it's an interesting game, and it just looks very BioShock-ish. It's like someone described it this way, and we're watching the trailer. It's described it as BioShock combined with Wolfenstein, because you had that retro alternate universe sort of thing, then that sort of technological aspect like BioShock and Rapture. Now, is it as good as either one of those games, especially BioShock? I don't know. It's been getting eights, sevens, eights across the board, mostly sevens at high 7 range, was again pretty good, especially the first person genre is not an easy genre to impress people in my opinion. There are too many quality games out there.
Yeah. It's saturated at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
And not in necessarily a bad way. It's just it's a lot of good from first person games now.
Exactly.
It's just, so if you're gonna come with a first person, you gotta cut through. That's interesting.
Right. So we'll be looking at the trailer for that. Next up is one of the newest entries in the Yakuza series, Like a Dragon, Ishin. And that's on the PS4, 5, Xbox One, SX, and PC. Action game from publisher Ryu Gotoku Studios. Say that 10 times fast. And of course, published by Sega. So, Like a Dragon, Ishin follows a young samurai named Sakamoto Ryoma, based on the real-life person who lived during Japan's Bakumatsu era. Haven't been watching up anime lately. A pivotal time in the mid-1800s when the ruling shogunate crumbled ahead of the Meiji Restoration. As loose historical fiction, the game masterfully blends fictional flourishes with actual people like Ryoma. So I've never gotten into the Yakuza series, even Like a Dragon series, but I've always been an admirer because for me, I see those games and I know they all sort of have their roots way back with the Dreamcast and Shenmue. So I love that evolution of that gameplay and whatnot. For me, I just hadn't gotten into them, but it looks great.
Okay. Is there a trailer for that?
No, we are not watching a trailer for that one. With all these games this week, we will be here all night watching trailers. Next up, we have Digimon World New Orders on the Switch and PC. It's Digimon RPG. It's from BB Studios, publisher Bandai Namco. And I didn't really put too much about this game because it was originally published in 2017 on the PS4. So they're just porting it to the Switch and the PC. I'm like, we just got a new Digimon game, late last year or mid last year? So this is interesting they're re-releasing this now, especially since it's just a port. It kind of sucks though, in my opinion.
Digimon, they've always, I don't know, I feel like there's a slight resurgence happening. The anime's gotten rebooted and I think now that Digimon has rested on the fact that Nintendo is probably going to be the flagship home for that brand, they're starting to kind of revamp things, take it back a little bit and relaunch. So
that makes sense.
I guess it makes sense. Yeah,
it makes sense. Yeah, it definitely makes sense in this case. Next up, and also with the Switch, with the power of the Switch or the underpower of the Switch, it probably takes minimum effort to port a game like that from 2017. It was PS4 onto the Switch. So it's probably very minimal investment. They probably recouped their returns, especially coming off the heels of the latest game that just came out a couple months ago. So it's not a bad business play, I would say.
I agree.
Next up, we have Blood Bowl 3, which is on the PS4, 5, Xbox One, SX, Switch, and PC. Is a strategy sports game from Sinai Studio and Big Ben Interactive. Blood Bowl 3 is a fantasy football in action, a turn-based strategy game inspired where elves, humans, orcs, and other creatures fight for the ball with shoulder charges, kicks, punches, and weapons. I've always seen the Blood Bowl series, not Bloodborne. That's a totally different game series right there. The CG movies for it look cool. After that, I'm like, there's nothing that makes me want to play this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's my first time hearing about it. So,
and it's the third one.
Right. I mean, it sounds interesting. I mean, I don't know.
I always think
it's such a football. Well, I say American football. It's such a finite game. Like
Yeah.
the rules never change.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to like reimagine it, even with all the extra. Oh, it's elves and things. It's still football.
Right. When I see this game, I always think if there was a game, I feel like it's in the 16-bit era. It was Mutant League Football. So it was regular football with like mutants. I feel like there was a cartoon based on that too. It probably was in the 90s. Anyway, so it was football game and they were mutants. So I always think of that when I hear Blood Bowl with the orcs and whatnot. And that was more zany than strategy though. And they played, more like an arcade football game with zaniness because of the mutants and everything. So, but that's Blood Bowl 3. Next up, we have Company of Heroes 3 for the PC. Is a strategy game from Relic Entertainment and Sega again. Is described as bigger and better than ever. Company of Heroes 3 combines heart-pounding action with deep strategic choices and a stunning Mediterranean theater of war. In Company of Heroes 3, every battle tells a story. What's yours?
Don't have one.
It's a strategy game. What's that? World War II, Mediterranean. I'm not big on war games, personally speaking. And then you add strategies to it, I'll pass. Again, not my cup of tea, but Company Heroes is on number 3, so there's definitely a market for it. And, definitely something that I'm sure a lot of people will get into. And let's talk about Sega. Just really, you forget how diverse of a portfolio of a publisher Sega is. Because you only ever think of Sonic. You think of like Valkyrie Chronicles and some of the more not necessarily just Japan stuff now, but the stuff that's very much known in Japan, the Yakuza series. But then you have stuff like Company of Heroes or the Total War series, which everybody forgets the Sega publishes. It's amazing the breadth of the sort of games they publish, because they all kind of slip under the radar and just do really well.
Yeah, which that's good for Sega because you don't have to depend on somebody like Sony or Microsoft to come by you and keep pumping money into you so you can keep going.
Right. Dear Sega, can we please get a Dreamcast Mini? Come on now, please.
I mean,
please.
Because really, we didn't forget Sega. We didn't forget that you came into the console game, whatever. Yes, people had their time liking everything you was doing with the Dreamcast to the PlayStation, but the Dreamcast still had a market. It still had fans.
Look,
and we
Dreamcast was the best system ever. I don't care what anybody say.
Dreamcast, listen, if we want to be real about it, the Dreamcast literally led the charge for a solid time. They what was it? Nintendo, when they came out with the 64, they kind of stole that controller design from the Dreamcast. We could like plug the little thing into it, have a screen on it. Dreamcast was ahead of its time, and
it really was.
Come on back and be like of the time because it's necessary.
Right, I agree with you on that one. Next up, we have not a Sega published game. But this is one we're all watching a trailer for. This is Grim Guardians. Demon Purge is on the PS4, 5, Xbox One, SX, Switch, and PC. It is from Intel Crates and PQ as a publisher. And that was just a weird name because it's like P, capital P, then capital Q, then UB. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm assuming that stands for something. So if you guys know, let me know. So the game centers around 2 demon hunters who return to their school after a mission only to find a demonic castle where it once stood. Players control both the demon hunting sisters in this 2D side-scrolling action game. And that's actually why I wanted to see, because we don't get too many 2D side-scrolling action games too often. I'm like, no, we gotta watch the trailer for this one.
Right. Yeah, I'm down for that.
All right. So next up is Clive and Wrenches on the PS4, 5, Switch, and PC. It's a platformer from publisher Dinosaur Bite Studios and publisher Numbskull Games. Clive and Wrench is a 3D platformer starring Clive, a rabbit, and Wrench, the literal monkey on his back. Your adventure takes you hurtling through time and in space on a 1950s refrigerator. On a historic quest to thwart the tyrannical Dr. Dracus and stop his evil plan.
That's the quirkiness
This
of
sounds like the throwback that it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the quirkiness of the late 90s, early 2000s coming back.
Yeah.
Like this is a game that would have came out when like Rayman was popping
Yes.
and even Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and stuff. Like it's one of those platformers that's a
I get
quirky
Banjo
element to it.
Kazooie
Yeah.
vibes from listening to the title. I mean, listen to
I'm
the
listening
description.
to you describe it.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like Jack and Daxter a little
Yeah, I was
bit.
thinking, that too. Yeah.
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 Are we watching a trailer for that?
We are not, but
okay. I'll check it on
I'll throw it in for next week so we can talk about it. I started to put it on the list, but I'm like, we're too top heavy on this one this week.
Yeah, we got a lot.
So yeah, I'll throw it in for next week that we can watch and critique it because I'm interested in really watching that too. All right, next up we have Kirby's back again. I swear it's been not quite a year since his big 3D adventure came out, but now we're back with Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe on the Switch. It's a platformer from, of course, HAL Laboratories. Nobody's developing a Kirby game but HAL Laboratories. Get real. And of course, published Nintendo. So Kirby's Dream Land carries forward in this deluxe edition a dimension-hopping alien named Megalore. A ship has crash landed on Kirby's planet Popstar. Wait a minute, his planet is really named Popstar? Really?
I had no idea.
I had no idea.
It makes sense. He always be around the
star. It really does. I had to think about it. And it's up to Kirby and friends and frenemies to collect the pieces of his ship so he can get home. So one of the things when I saw this and we're watching the trailer for this, it is multiplayer. I don't know if it's multiplayer online or local only. So it'll be interesting to see because that just sounds really cool.
It multiplayer Kirby cool. Game. And I would imagine, I don't know. I would imagine that this might have an online component to it.
I would think so.
Yeah, because I mean, not that Nintendo Online needs more online games because the online games they have are fine. Like it's not very many, but they do great without an online component. But I would imagine if we can have, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it's online. I hope at least because that would be fun. I don't want people coming over here. We could let's do it online.
Right. But I agree. Last up this week that isn't PlayStation VR, because like I told you, there are a lot of games released, but most of them PlayStation VR too. So we will literally be here about a good hour and a half, 2 hours going through every single game. But last up is Octopath Traveler 2, the sequel to the RPG game that came out a couple years ago from Square Enix. It's on the PS4, 5, Switch, and PC. As I said before, it's an RPG. So the game it's a traditional RPG. The player moves between 8 separate characters, hence the Octopath name. Each of their own purpose in traversing the game world. Once again, each character has their own path, action, a particular means for the player to have the perspective or respective character interact with non-player characters in the game world. Often the goal of getting reward items or characters to fight in support of their cause. So it's a sequel to Octopath Traveler. Not to sound belittling, but it's another RPG from Square Enix.
Yeah.
So in many respects, you kind of know what you're getting into. They have a style, have a flair. If you played the first one, I'm pretty sure you'll find shades of the first one in this one. If you haven't played one, if you played any other Square Enix RPG, maybe outside of Final Fantasy, then you know what you expect as well. So that's it for Octopath Traveler. Let's get into the trailers. First up, we have our lone VR game on the list for the PlayStation VR 2, and that is Firewall Ultra.
Right. Raven here. You want to be a contractor? According to your reputation, you have the right skills for the job. If you're interested, the risk is high, but so is the reward. We have multiple contracts, from solo intel gathering to team strike force operations. Locations are hot, and you were never there. If you're compromised, you're on your own. Are you ready?
Okay.
So you have to be over 12 to use PlayStation VR 2? That's news to me. What if you're a big 12-year-old or a big 11-year-old? Come on. All right, so that was Firewall Ultra. I thought it was kind of neat. I didn't realize that it was online multiplayer as well. So that would be neat playing that in VR.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a big selling point for some people.
Yeah, I agree.
Have the other VR games been online multiplayer?
I don't know if they have been, but that's not something I've seen really talked about with the VR one.
Right,
I know that game that Meta is canceling that everybody was talking about was a big Meta Quest or whatever it is. It was a VR competitive sort of someone compared to say it was like VR Quidditch or something to that extent. So I know that was a VR multiplayer game, but other than that, I don't remember there being too many, if any, multiplayer VR games on the PS VR one. Again, I don't have a PlayStation. I've never played it, and I'm pretty sure something exists. But in the gaming space, in gaming news, and when people talk about games, I've never once heard anyone talk about a PlayStation VR game and refer to it having multiplayer. So that is where I'm going from.
Yeah.
Anybody come at me in the comments. I have a limited knowledge. Yeah. And I'm only speaking on limited knowledge, but I admit to have limited knowledge.
Yeah, which is fine. I have limited knowledge as well, and I own PlayStation products. I've just not been interested in VR. I don't know if they have online games over there, but it's cool if they do because they really want VR to be the next wave of gaming, and I think online is going to be a big help for that.
Right. Next up is one that we think has online multiplayer, and that is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe.
Yes, if standard edition wasn't enough.
A new story will unfold in the Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe game. Magolor, the interdimensional traveler from the main adventure, has lost his powers and must escape the realm between dimensions. All he can do now is a basic attack and jump. To regain Magolor's powers, you'll need to collect magic points by defeating enemies. With magic points, different abilities can be restored and enhanced. Improve Magolor's levitation or increase his attack range. The order in which you restore his powers is up to you. There are over 20 interdimensional stages to explore. Up to 4 players on the same system can venture through this mysterious realm together. Can Magolor restore his powers and safely return to his world? You can access this new epilogue after clearing story mode.
Okay.
After today's Nintendo Direct, a demo will be available on Nintendo eShop. Up to 4 players can play a specially arranged demo with select stages and sub-games. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe launches on the Nintendo Switch system February 24th. Pre-order.
All right, there we go. Kirby's Dreamland Deluxe. That's a really robust, I guess, addition with 20 additional levels in epilogue. Yeah. Essentially, is that even classified as a new game plus because you only lock it after you finish? But you don't play through the full game again. It's like 20 additional levels.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why they told it as a deluxe, because
that's a lot.
Building on top of what they have.
That's a lot. I will say this much. I am a staunch opponent of DLC at times. Mm-hmm. But when Nintendo makes DLC,
Yeah,
they give you like they don't give
content
you
is there.
like another leg. Like this is one thing with Nintendo. When they give DLC, it never feels like this is like something that should have been part of a game. Like with Mario Kart, they have like what 3 different waves of new track. They've added like 50 plus new tracks. Like you know that wasn't content that they cut. That's content that they created after the fact and added. And that's the one thing with Nintendo. Never have I felt like any of the at least first party additional content that they put out that I feel like it was something that they could have done beforehand. And then when they do it, it is so much content. In many respects, sometimes it's almost worth a new game. Like the Mario Kart tracks. You get all of them for like, I think it's like $25. That is a pretty, and again, that's if you don't buy the online deluxe thing for Nintendo. But that's a really good price for 50 some tracks. You're talking about 50 cents a track.
Yeah. And with that comes the ability, because you know, with Mario Kart, they got the 3 different speeds or whatever.
Right.
And if you beat each track on those speeds, you get like a special trophy. So it really adds more playability to the core game. I like when Nintendo do DLC. They understand what downloadable content means.
Yes, they do. They really do.
Versus these other DLC, like some companies, they get it right as well. They actually adding on to the baseline story with stuff like that. But Nintendo, they've come out the gate. They're like, we're not just gonna give you extra playable character until you start the story over with this person. It's like, no, the character, a ton of missions, extra stuff added on. Nintendo's great.
Yeah, they are. Speaking of classic gaming names, let's talk about Akka Arrh from Atari.
Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. I'm just having fun with this name.
Is he a pirate? Like, what's going on?
Okay. So I was looking it up. Jeff Minter did Tempest. So it kind of gives me a little bit of a Tempest vibe with that, even though it's not the 3D all around stuff. But I mean, it looks like an Atari game in 2023. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what it is.
Yeah.
I feel like that's perfect.
Yeah, that is perfect. That's perfect. Look, that's all we can say about that. It's, you know, if you're a gamer, let me play this. If you're definitely a Gen Xer, you're a Gen X and even a millennial, not saying, you know, Gen Z don't know nothing about that, but there is something about the Atari name that regardless of whose hand has passed through over the years, and it's been through a lot of people's hands in the past 40 plus years, if not 50 years. You cannot have, if you don't have warm and fuzzies just hearing that name and seeing a game from Atari, you're definitely too young.
Yeah, I agree.
I won't say you're not a gamer, but you're definitely too young to understand.
Yeah, you missed one of the golden eras of gaming.
Yeah, you really did. You really
Atari,
did.
that thing whole weight, they kicked it off for everybody, really.
Yes, it did.
Like, there was no stable console before the Atari came out and was like, this is what you're going to do to play this video game. And then even after they got their console stuff situated, they took over the arcades. Like almost every arcade game was, Atari did this, or like just had to be there.
And then they shot themselves in the foot, but that's a whole nother story.
Things happen.
Yeah, things happen. Greed is good, but greed will also destroy you, and that's what happened to Atari.
But I'm glad they still finding their way. You know?
Yeah. That IP is always valuable. Somebody's gonna buy it.
I think Sega should.
That would be interesting.
I think Sega should buy Atari, and and move forward with the company, that whatever that creates for those two companies, because they have the same cloth. Like, they came out around the same time. They entered the gaming space in the relatively same way. And we being honest, the only thing that took people away from Atari was the Sega Genesis, and that
but really Nintendo did that. Atari killed themselves.
With the Super Nintendo.
And then Nintendo, when they came out with the NES, that, what was it, 2600, 52, the Atari never really, the 5200 never took off.
Yeah.
And then the 7800 was really a last ditch effort, and that failed too, but that's another story. But we can get into video game history in another show. Let's talk about the future, or in this case, an alternate future with Atomic Heart. So that was a short trailer.
Yeah,
it looks chaotic. Let me tell you, Brian, it's amazing. I'm not a first-person shooter person, but I'm ended up playing all these first-person shooters. I'm going to be playing this. I was playing High on Life. Like, it comes down to the story. It comes down to the aesthetic, and this just looks really exciting.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah, it looks exciting. It looks like it'll be a really fun game to play. And I think for me, going back to how we started the show, I think for such a long time, everything was a play on Call of Duty. And I think that got me out of even wanting to play first-person shooters, because everything was trying to be Call of Duty. And now we're seeing that Call of Duty's gotten long in the tooth. Not saying it does not sell well, because it does.
It does.
But more and more game studios are trying to do something different now, because just being a Call of Duty clone is really now a recipe for failure. It's not even it's not going to cut it. No, you're not going to succeed, because it's Call of Duty and nothing else. I mean, we've seen what happened with Battlefield.
Yeah, I was about to say.
EA shot themselves in the foot too with that Battlefield, 2049. Yeah, but again, companies shooting themselves in the feet when it comes to their games and live. Oh, we got to talk about these live service games when we show. That's a whole show right there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Atomic Heart, and last up on our trailers is Grim Guardians Demon Purge.
Okay.
A demon's castle looms.
Time for some demon hunting.
Two heirs of the Kamizono Demon Hunters take on its challenge.
Leave it to me. Okay.
I like the 2D art, the pixel. I love that.
Castlevania.
Yeah. I'm getting very much Castlevania. It's definitely a Metroidvania game.
She was it.
Shinobu, Kamizono the Elder. She excels in long-range combat with her trusty submachine gun. Maya, Kamizono the Younger. Her fierce origami slices through foes up close and personal. With an arsenal of anti-demon weaponry, they expose the castle's secrets. Their bond will eradicate even the strongest demons.
Oh, two-player mode, that's cool.
Yeah. That is cool. I like a good co-op game, man.
Yeah, I like that.
I need we need to depart from all of this live service battle royale to give me a good co-op game.
Can the castle's victims be saved?
Thanks so much. Thank you. We'll hide somewhere safe. Thank you.
Only Shinobi and Maya can solve the mystery.
Let's do this.
When a demon's castle darkens the land, two sisters challenge its halls. Grim Guardians.
Even got like a little anime style to it. I like this.
Available.
Yeah, this is a really cool game.
2023.
I'll say this much, and this is what I feel, especially considering what Konami has not released a Castlevania game in a while.
Mm-hmm.
All these companies need to start paying them some money for how heavily their games are inspired by Castlevania specifically. I know mechanics are Metroidvania, so you get some, but just coming in, all these games are very much inspired by the style and aesthetic of Castlevania. And you can't look at this game and say, oh, they like playing Castlevania. They like playing Symphony of Night. Like you just know. And again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I love that, personally speaking, that you do have this, and that you know that these seminal video games have inspired so many others to go into making video games. They inspire them to want to do that, and that's absolutely beautiful. But this game looks cool. It looks, I mean, you get a little bit of that Castlevania-ish vibe, Metrovania vibes. You got the two-player co-op. I don't know why with some of those boss battles, I got some like Metal Slug vibes from it as well. It has a great art style. Yeah, this is definitely one that will be fun to play, especially, you know, I would imagine. Well, I know I'll have to look it up, but I would assume it's not online co-op. Probably couch co-op, but still, that's just still pretty fun.
Yeah, which, like I was saying, more co-op games, please, developers, because I mean, online co-op, yes, but like co-op, because I still cherish Army of Two to this day.
Right.
And I feel like it's probably one of the greatest co-op games of all time. I want it back, but you know.
Was that an EA published game?
Army of Two?
Yeah.
I think it was EA, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I think there was. But yeah, more co-op games. This one looks great. I'm definitely interested in it. Like, I agree with everything you just said. Castlevania, like, they started something, and we have all of these other companies inspired by it that are creating these really, really dope games that kind of emulate, but still are unique in their own right. I really enjoy that. So definitely trying to check out Grim Guardians. Right.
So that's our gaming for the week. Brian, what's going on with you?
Talk+Play blerdcast. I just put one out, a new episode, I should say, a few hours ago. Wherever you stream podcasts, check that out. It's there. That's it. I'm gonna be outside this weekend. Check on the podcast. You want to hear about that? Okay. Or follow me on Instagram, because I'll be posting things. And that's it. What about yourself?
Let's see. Episode 144 dropped this past Monday, at least at the time of this recording. Game related, I was talking about Street Fighter. I talk about Capcom Arcade Second Stadium in my download. One of the things about the Stadium series from Capcom, you could buy them as one whole game, or you could buy the individual games piecemeal. Well, right now, at least on the Xbox store, all the games are half off, so they're like 99 cents. So I bought the whole Darkstalker series. I bought Hyper Street Fighter 2. Like I said, I was getting my Street Fighter itch. I'm like, oh, this is only 99 cents. Download. So, like, that's something, if anybody's watching this week, it's still up. Check that out. You download it for free. At least the Stadium, you get one free game. And with the Stadium 2, it's a game I've never heard of before. But with Stadium 1, you get like 1942 is your free download. But yeah, you want to get like the whole Darkstalker series for like $4 or $5. Now it's the time to get it before that sale ends.
Yeah,
but that's
a great deal.
144 and 145 next. So of course, I'm talking about Star Trek Picard. I just watched episode 2 for season 3. So far, it doesn't suck, and I'm really enjoying it. I was not at this place last season, last year, so I am feeling good about this season. But I got a lot of stuff. I got some new fragrances in the house and whatnot. So we're gonna have a lot to talk about this coming Monday when episode 145 drops. But of course, you are with the Nerds Who Rule the World. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at the NRW, on Instagram at New Release Wednesday, and of course, you're on YouTube. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe, comrades.
For good breath.